All right, so this whole rest of the unit is all going to be about factoring quadratics. Once again, getting to our name with algebra with quadratics here. So today is going to be probably the most difficult day in math that you've had all year long. Just kidding, April Fools. That's right, make an April Fool's joke in May. The hardest thing we're going to do today is we're going to multiply two numbers and we're going to add two numbers. So it actually should be a nice, easy day. We call these X problems or X puzzles, and they're more of a brain teaser puzzle type thing than they actually are doing a lot of hard work or solving equations or anything like that. So how these work is that you have two numbers. So you have a first number and a second number. Order of these don't matter. But you're going to take them and you're going to multiply them and the answer goes up here, and you're going to add them and the answer goes here. So for example, if my two numbers are 4 and 10, when I multiply 4 times 10, you get 40. When you multiply 4 times, or when you add 4 and 10, so 4 plus 10 gives you 14. So that's just how these work. So let's take a look at the first view. So if I've got 3 and 5, then I want to multiply them. So we multiply to get the top. So 3 times 5 is going to give me 15. And then we add to get the bottom. So 3 plus 5 is 8. And that's all I'm doing. So go ahead, pause the video, see if you can get the next three of these done. All right, so negative 2 times 7 is negative 14. Negative 2 plus 7 is 5. Negative 10 times 0, anything times 0 is 0. And negative 10 plus 0, just negative 10. Negative 2 times negative 4, okay, I lied, there is some algebra here. So negative 2 times negative 4 is 8, and then x times x is x squared. If we add these two things, a negative 2x and a negative 4x, just add to negative 6x. Sweet. All right, so same thing here. We are still going to multiply to get the top and add to get the bottom. But this time I only gave you one of the sides. You have to figure out the other two numbers. So you have to figure out the side and the bottom of the x. So if I have to multiply 5 and some number to get 15, what does that number have to be? And so that has to be a 3, right? Because 5 times 3 equals 15. And then now, since I know both the numbers, I can add them. So 5 plus 3 equals 8. All right, once again, pause the video. See if you can figure out the other three on your own. All right, so 8 times what equals negative 40? Or you can just literally type in your calculator, negative 40 divided by 8. Since we're going backwards, we'd use the inverse of multiplication. And we'll get negative 5. Right, because 8 times negative 5 gives me a negative 40. And then we have to add them. We'll get a positive 3. Once again, just plug into your calculator. 8 either plus a negative 5 or 8 minus 5. Either way, you get the same thing. All right. So for this one, we get negative 2 as the other side number. So negative 2 times negative 6, and negative times a negative is a positive. And then when we add them, we get negative 8. Last one, a negative 21 divided by negative 3, or negative 3 times what? That would be a positive 7. Negative 3 times positive 7 is negative 21. And x times x equals x squared. When I add these, 4x. So hopefully this math part is review. Hopefully you're able to do these diamond problems on your own. And you're doing them, you pause the video and trying to figure them out on your own. Next one. All right, so this time I gave you a side and the bottom. So you have to figure out the other side and the top. So if I have to add, let's switch colors here. If I have to add two numbers, so 5 plus something to give me 8, well, what do I have to add? If you want to plug something in your calculator, once again, we're doing the inverse operation, so you want to subtract, so 8 minus 5, and that gives you 3, right? Because 3 plus 5 equals 8. And then now that I have the two numbers, I can multiply them, 3 times 5, and get 15 when I multiply them. All right, next one. Once again, pause the video, see if you can do the other one, 3 on your own. All right, so 7. So 0 plus what number gives me 7? And that would obviously be 7, right? 0 plus 7 equals 7. And then I can multiply them, 0 times 7, to get an answer of 0. All right, here we go. So what number minus 6 equals 4? That would be a positive 10. 10 minus 6 equals 4, right? And then 10 times negative 6, negative 60. All right, and this last one, negative 5x plus what equals negative 9x? Remember, we have to keep going more negative. In fact, I want to go negative 4 more. And then when I multiply them, a negative 5 times a negative 4 is a positive 20. And x times x is x squared. All right, and last but not least, these are definitely a little bit more challenging. This is where like the brain teaser / puzzle comes in here. So now I haven't given you either side number. So you have to ask yourself what two numbers are going to multiply to get 15 and add to get to 8. So you have to kind of think about, oh, okay, what multiplies to get to 15? And this is when coming up with factors might be good. So you might say, okay, so I can do 1 and 15, but when I add 15 and 1, that doesn't equal 8. So how else do I multiply to get 15? I do 3 and 5, right? 3 times 5, and then 3 plus 5 is, oh, it's 8. So this is going to be 3 and 5. So you want to think about what's going to multiply to get the top, and then see if that adds to the bottom. Once again, pause the video and see how you do on these three. All right, so this first one, 25, what multiplies to get 25? So I'm thinking I can type into my calculator, find those factors just like you did with GCF. I've got 1 and 25. Those aren't going to add to 10, so then I got 5 and 5, and those do add to get 10. So 5 and 5 is my answers. All right, 6. Let's see what are factors of 6. We've got 1 and 6. Okay, but 1 plus 6 doesn't equal 7. And we got 2 and 3, which multiply to get 6, but they don't add to get a negative 5. They add to get a positive 5. So there's, with the negative 5 here, that tells me that at least one of mine has to be negative. And actually, because this is positive, it tells me that exactly both of them have to be negative. Right? Because how do we multiply to get a positive number? A positive times a positive equals a positive. A positive times a negative equals negative. A negative times a positive equals negative. And a negative times a negative equals a positive. So in order to get an answer that is positive, they both have to be the same symbol. So they either both have to be positive or both have to be negative. Well, if I'm adding to get a negative number, that tells me that they both can't be positive. So therefore, they both have to be negative. And if we look at it, negative 2 and negative 3 works perfectly, right? Because 2 plus 3 added to get 5, but we wanted the negative 5. So now I know a negative 2 plus a negative 3 equals negative 5, and negative 2 times negative 3 is a positive 6. So that one's a little tricky, and the negatives are what makes this a little bit tougher. But if you use some guessing and checking, maybe use some logical guessing like that, should make it a little bit easier on you. And last one here, negative 20x squared and 8x. So what multiplies to get negative 20? So actually, here we're right in here, right? One of them has to be positive and one of them has to be negative in order to get a negative answer when we multiply. So just keep that in mind as you're trying to figure out your factors. I know 1 and 20 isn't going to work. 2 and 10. Ooh, that does look like it's going to work, right? Because if one of them is positive and one of them is negative, that means we're going to be subtracting them. So we're going to make a 2x and 10x, which once again isn't quite right. One of them has to be negative. So which one has to be negative in order to make this positive? And if this is positive, then that means the bigger number has to be positive. Therefore, this has to be the negative. So negative 2 times 10 is going to be negative 20. X times x is x squared. And then negative 2x plus 10x is a positive 8x. So all of this guessing and checking and figuring out and making logical is why we kind of call it an X puzzle or an X problem to figure out. So you'll see another 8 problems here. So I'm going to pause the video, see if you can get them done. It's just kind of a mixture of everything. When you come back on, I'm not going to explain how to do them, but you will see the answers to see if you were able to get them right or if you got stuck, what they are. Obviously, feel free to come on chat if you've got any questions about these or if you don't know why something's right. All right, here we go. Here are the answers to the first 4. Just a reminder that these two numbers can be flipped, so you could have put a negative 3 and a 3 here, or vice versa, put a negative 6 here and a positive 4. The numbers, it doesn't matter which one's the first and which one's the second. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, here's the answer. Take a look at this one real quick, right? So notice that we had a negative 24 here, but this was a negative 2. If we go to the next page, we had a very similar problem here, except this was positive. So it doesn't matter which one's negative and which one's positive between the 4 and the 6, because you will get a different answer here. So in this problem, the 4 is negative, so that our 6 is positive. And in this other one, the 6 was negative, so that we could get a negative 2. Definitely will affect your answers in the long run. The other thing I will say about this is just note that if you have the same number with one being positive and one being negative, then you'll get a 0 down there, and then you just multiply them to get up there. Or vice versa, if there's a 0 up top, and then there is a 9 down in the bottom, then this answer is not the case. Sorry for that mistake. Right, because if we multiply to get 0, one of them has to be 0, and then the other one is going to be the bottom number. Okay? So if you see a 0 up top and a number on the bottom, then one of them is going to be 0, and the other one's going to be the bottom number, because 9 plus 0 equals 9. Sorry about that mistake. And once again, hopefully today was a little bit easier for you. Once again, it's just kind of puzzling through it, but it will help significantly with factoring quadratics, which we are going to build up to over the next few days.